Assalamualaikum and hi, I'm from Group 7 and my group consists of me, Nur Safia binti Yusuf, and my metric number is 192157, and the others groupmate is Nurul Azmi Auni, Siti Khadijah binti Omar, Hanis Syamim binti Syahrul Azmi. We are going to present about OSAS. Basically, OSAS 18001 is an occupational health and safety assessment series. It was a British standard for occupational health and safety management system. So firstly, we are going to discuss on the roles and responsibilities of top management staff of Faculty of Science in ensuring the occupational and health safety of admin building and block D are made for every facility. Next, discuss about PDA cycle on the management on OSAS 18001 based on Activity 1. Siti Khadijah and Hanis Syamim will discuss on Activity 1 and Anis Auni will discuss on Activity 2.
And hi everyone, I am Siti Khadijah. This video we're going to explain about the hierarchy on the admin building and faculty science building. For the admin building, I will explain more about the hierarchy, while for the faculty science building, which is FS2, we'll explain more by Hanis. So what is hierarchy actually? So hierarchy is stands for hazard identification, risk assessment and risk control. So why we need hierarchy actually? So hierarchy must be implemented to reduce or control the possibility for any accident to occur. So for hierarchy, there are several steps that need for us to go through. Which is, first one is classify work activities. Second one is hazard identifications. The third one we determine the risk, and next conduct the risk assessment. The fifth one we risk control action plan, and lastly review adequate risk control. So the first one, we need to classify the work activities. For the hierarchy at the admin building, mostly this building is for workplace for faculty science worker and the student center. So it's more related to an office building rather than faculty science 2 is more related to the lab work. The second step for the hierarchy analysis is the hazard identifications. So hazard is actually a source or a situation with a potential harms in terms of human injury or ill health and damage to property. So actually hazard can we classify into several characterized. The first one is health hazard, safety hazard and environmental hazards. So for any building we have a laboratory. So sometimes there is chemical that we throw into the sink and flow out into the drain. So it will lead to environmental hazard and health hazards. So safety hazard is any force strong enough to cause injury or damage to property, such as slipping, tripping, hazard such as wire run across the floor. And next one is moving part of machinery, tools and equipment such as pinch and knead point that have at the edges of the building or maybe at the table. So environmental hazard can cause harm when control and work procedure are not followed. So for hazard identification, we need to identify what is actually the hazard that have in that place. There are another example of hazard that may occur from the workplace. This hazard is in the form of psychological hazard. This psychological hazard include stress, sexual harassment and violence. The risk assessments will better make columns which I will put what are the hazards that we already identified. As example, as I said before, the hazard that we already identified is the stress that came from the workers. So how might this harm the workers? All staff, examples, all staff could be affected by factors such as a lack of job control, bullying and not knowing their role. Another hazard that we identify is from the electrical parts, which is staff could get electrical shock or burn from the using faulty electrical equipment. Electrical fault can also lead to a fire. For the general of risk control, there are several steps that we can do to control the hazard. First one is by eliminations. Eliminate any possible object that can lead to hazards. Next is engineering control, more related to the structure of the building. The third one is administrative control, and the last one is personal protective equipment. This, as I mentioned before, regarding the chemical risk that are thrown in the cell. In these situations, what we can do from risk control is by administrative control. We explain more about safe work system and practice, and do not throw the chemical on the cell.
Hi everyone, I'm Hani Shami and I will proceed to the higher explanation on the block D at the building of the Faculty Science 2. The steps for higher analysis at block D are basically the same as the steps at the admin building, which is explained previously by Khadijah. So for the first step, we need to classify work activities at block D. This block consists of offices and mostly are laboratories. So I'll focus more on the hierarchy analysis at the laboratory. The second step for hierarchy analysis at block D is hazard identification. Hazard can be divided into three main groups: health hazard, safety hazard, and environmental hazard. At lab, experiments conducted frequently and represent a variety of hazards. For health hazard at the office, spending a large portion of workday at the computer can cause an eye strain, and eye can become dry and irritated. While health hazard at the laboratory, the use and exposure of chemicals in the experiment may cause injury and harm. For example, exposure to silica dust or asbestos is associated with heart disease. For safety hazard, most experiments conducted at lab are performed for long durations, especially when workers need to elute the column in the fume hood that will result in pain, sustained and repetitive awkward postures, and also using centrifuge that operates at high speed will have a great potential for users to be injured if not operated properly. For environmental hazards, some waste chemicals at the lab contain chemicals that are hazardous to people and environment when it is contaminated with groundwater and or surface water. The next step of hierarchy is the risk assessment. Using likelihood and severity in the qualitative method for risk analysis is a very effective way to evaluate the risk in the laboratory. So, we need to collect information about each hazard identified and using of the information to assess the likelihood and consequence of the hazard. Then, present the result in a risk matrix. The third step is risk control to eliminate and inactivate hazards. The most effective way is to eliminate the hazards, such as change the damaged equipment. And if it is not practical, then use the personal protective equipment (PPE) such as lab coat, goggles, gloves, or full-covered shoes at the laboratory to prevent the hazard. So therefore, it is important to implement hierarchy as the basis of occupational safety and health in the organization. Hierarchy analysis is able to identify all factors that may cause harm to the workers and enable the employers to plan, introduce, and monitor preventive measures to ensure that the risks are controlled at all times.